So I know October is usually my late year theme month, but who cares? September's gonna be a theme month too. And that theme is fighting games. Why? Well, because I want to, short version. Long version, fighting games are a genre I've long since been a fan of, in no small part due to my older sister. Being 5 years my elder and somewhat more for action and flashy performance than my RPG-addicted little Snek self, it was actually her influence that got me to try out games like Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat for the first time. And while I do have my own fondness for those series, that'd be a little too obvious now, wouldn't it? So instead, we're going to talk about other games of the same genre instead, starting with the one that I actually grew up owning. Join me for a closer look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Greetings, everyone. This is the Hipster Snek, and the four lean, mean green heroes I'm going to talk about today will likely need no introduction of their own. Unless you're one of those extremely poor of the generation who had to grow up with only Rise of the TMNT on TV, you poor neglected things. I'm not joking. Cancel that show and burn the computers that house it and everything related to it. But anyway, that garbage aside, if you weren't around during Turtle Mania, let me try to set the stage. It was the late 80s, and the Fred Wolf animated series left an impact on the world of pop culture, the likes of which had not been seen before. You gotta understand, I came a little too late for the likes of He-Man, and while I did ride the wave of Power Rangers, I dropped off around the midpoint of Zeo, but I was primed and ready to be introduced to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And if you don't know their backstory, here's the short version. 4 baby turtles fell down a sewer pipe when the radioactive canister that blinded Marvel's Daredevil, this is canon, read the original Mirage comics, bounced out of a delivery truck and bathed the reptiles in its contents. Tended to by a rat dwelling in the sewers, the ooze had a miraculous effect, growing the 5 animals to human size and intelligence. For 15 years, the rat, Splinter, raised the 4 turtles as his own ninja assassins to claim revenge for his fallen master, Hamata Yoshi, due to the blood feud with the leader of a clan of ninjas known as the Foot Clan, Oroku Saki. Splinter trained each turtle in a weapon specialization and named each after one of his favorite Renaissance-era artists. First is Leonardo, wielding twin katanas, or ninjakin, whatever, it's really not that big a deal, and he serves as the turtles' leader. Donatello is the omnidisciplinarian scientist of the team and go-to tech head, who is also a master of the bow staff. Raphael is the angry one with a penchant for letting his fists and size do the talking, and Michelangelo, with an unnecessary A, is the relaxed pop culture junkie and master of the nunchucks. Their fated rival, Oroku Saki, takes on the mantle of the villainous Shredder and opposes them at every turn. From comics to animated series to action figures galore, the Ninja Turtles were a genuine phenomenon the likes of which has only ever been dwarfed by the anime manga boom some half-decade later courtesy of Pokemon exploding onto the scene. And of course, this includes video games. Lots and lots and lots of them. And today's games are no exception, and yes, I said it in plural. We'll actually be looking at 3 different titles who all share the same name, released in 1993 and 1994, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters for the NES, Sega Genesis, and SNES. Let's start with a quick mention of the box art before we start the breakdowns in earnest. There are 3 versions of this game, each sporting a different turtle and a colossal rival for them. On the NES, it's Leonardo and the Dragon Warrior Hothead. On the SNES, it's Donatello and the shark-like Armagon. And on Genesis, it's Raphael and a Triceraton, a dinosaur-like alien creature. For some reason, Michelangelo doesn't get a box art debut in this fashion. Some of my friends back in the day speculated this was going to be some feature on the Game Boy version of the game, but that's all hearsay. And even though they share the name, you'll quickly find these games are very different experiences. We'll begin with the NES game being a late bloomer for the console, having come out circa 1993. And I gotta say, it looks amazing for an NES game. The sprites are large and expressive, and for a 2D fighter on the NES of all things, it looks quite sharp. The turtle sprites are just palette swaps of the other, with only a few unique frames between them, but for some reason they don't use their weapons, or at least not in any combo I could get to work. And Hothead, the game's special appearance, is so big you can't even have a mirror match against him because the sprites go crazy. How bizarre. The audio is absolutely nothing to write home about. The music's okay, but the sound effects are tinny. And yeah, that's really all I got to say about that. So let's get into the mechanics. The game has your standard campaign mode where you battle it out with any one of 7 characters. the four turtles, Casey Jones, Shredder, and Hothead. There's also a story mode where you must pick one of the turtles and beat the others, culminating in a showdown with the Shredder per his invitation at the game's intro. There's even a 4-player enabled tournament mode with name entries and everything. It's mechanically quite impressive, when it isn't being unimpressive, which is most of the game's mechanics while in actual battles. You have 2 buttons to work with, so all the characters' attacks are all executed in precisely identical fashions, and the damage and priority of every attack seems random. Shredder himself has wicked SNK boss syndrome, as his ground spark attack deals about 1/4 of a fighter's health bar and damage if it isn't jumped or blocked. Not that most other attacks in this game are particularly well balanced, they aren't, with melee assaults doing a pittance and others like throws and Shoto spam up and away being dominant strategy. For obvious reasons, this was the least liked of the Tournament Fighters titles. But hey, it was the NES and it also was 1993. The SNES had been out 2 years by then, so giving it too much static would be a little unfair. Let's move on to the Sega Genesis port. The Sega Genesis Tournament Fighters title goes in a bit of a different direction, with a more sci-fi angle involved. And it looks really cool, relying on this sort of hybrid of styles between the Fred Wolf, softer, rounder turtles, and the Mirage Comics fierce turtles with teeth bared and eyes white with killing intent. The backgrounds are also really bizarre and interesting, with a very strong spacefaring motif courtesy of each battle happening on a different planet. Equally interesting is the Mega Man Classic style, in which you pick the order of your opponents by selecting each planet as you go. And the game has an obsession with giant alien heads in the background. Special note, none of them are animated and they remain perfectly still, staring at you the entire time you're playing. That's a little bit unsettling, isn't it? This time around, there's 8 characters to pick from. The 4 turtles, April in her first and only playable appearance in these titles, Casey Jones, Ray Fillet, an obscure nod to Archie Comics' Mighty Mutanimals of all things, and Sisyphus, an original beetle, alien, mutant, whatever creature made up just for this game, who was named Musha Beetle in Japan. And oh my god, I hate this sound so much. Everything is tinny and unpleasant, and time has not sweetened this. This game suffers from something awful. The music is okay, but the sound effects are weird and staticky. It's difficult to explain since some pixelation was expected for anything that uses voice clips, but it just seems severe. It all comes off as strange too, as Ray and Sisyphus seem to share their voice clips, but mirror matches against clone turtle opponents seem to have different, or at least modified, versions of those voice clips for themselves. Cowabunga! Cowabunga! All that said, how's it fare mechanically? Well, a lot like the NES version. 2 buttons are dedicated to attacking on the Genesis's 3-button layout. Even if you have one of those 6-button dealies, it won't get you anywhere. The 3rd button's for taunting and a special desperation attack which you can only use when nearly out of health and your health bar begins glowing. Otherwise, it's pretty much like the NES version, except the characters bother to use their individual weapons, so that's an improvement. However, the balance issues remain. Shoto spam and throws are overpowered and melee combos aren't worth executing. The enemies leap around the stage like they have a psychological aversion to standing still on the ground, and it makes playing it unpleasant as a result. It feels incredibly unpolished. Like, this one really could have been solid, but it was rushed or something and suffered for the result. Let's go to the final contender, the Super Nintendo version. In the interest of fairness, the Super Nintendo version was the one I grew up with, and it does feel like the complete game, or at least it does to me. With 9 playable characters and 2 unlockable secret boss characters, 4 turtles, Shredder, for some reason here named Cyber Shredder, but whatever, War, the gigantic purple monster from the Archie comics, Armagon, the shark monster, Chrome Dome, a robotic copy of Shredder, Wingnut, an alien bat creature, and Asuka, the lady ninja. You want to talk about weird fan things? Asuka was literally made just for this game to give it some cheesecake, but a lot of Turtles fans were super curious if she had a backstory or something. Well, she doesn't. End of story, I guess. Anyway, the game looks great, adapting all its various materials really well, including animated backgrounds this go around with really interesting elements I won't be drawing too much attention to, like the giant frog. That is a huge frog. Why is he so big? That frog is too big. Boy, that's unsettling. Anyway, that said, it's also a treat audio-wise. I love the music in this game, and it gets me pumped up for a fight. The voice line work is also a lot clearer in this one than it was in the Genesis. That doesn't mean limits don't apply. The 4 turtles still share their voice lines, likely for cartridge space reasons I must assume, but it still works. And I'll be honest, the game is not perfectly balanced. For instance, being caught in Leonardo's point-blank special will wipe out pretty much a completely full health bar in one go, and War isn't too far behind it. It feels like it's better balanced than the alternatives, but still just off the mark. And some characters, like Leonardo and Donatello for instance, have easy one-button spam attacks that feel just a little bit too good in controlling your distance to your enemies, and the AI feels cheap at times. But overall, this is really the definitive version of Tournament Fighters as a whole. But that just begs the question, why on earth would you make 3 versions of the same game? Why not make one big, definitive version? Sure, the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis were the powerhouse consoles of 93 and 94, but why bother wasting resources for an NES port? That was on its way out already. Put more into the 2 main games, the ones people will actually play. That way, instead of 3 games with a bad, okay, and good installment with rosters all below 10, more or less, you could have had 2 really similar solid games with 10 or 11 fighters each. The SNES is the only one that doesn't have Casey Jones as playable, for example. I think that would have been a better winning move, maybe sporting 2 turtles on each cover instead of having just 1 each. Not that there aren't other amazing Turtles games, and I will get to those at some point, just I wanted to kick off Fighting Month in an interesting and novel way. And that's the final word on these 3 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fighting titles. This has been the Ninja Snek. If you liked today's episode, ninja strike that like button to let me know. Be sure to hit the subscribe and bell icons too, for more like this every week. Each week we have more obscure reviews, IndieX, Tomodachi Bros anime podcast episodes, Snek Talks, movie reviews, and more. You never know what you'll get next time, other than it's gonna be great. Join me here each week and I will see you there.